Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's health and wellness webinar, AI Visibility for Nutrition Pros, how to get your content found and used. We are delighted today to have multiple speakers brought to you by the Foundation for Fresh Produce. My name is Katie Calagero. For those who don't know me, I am the Director of Marketing and Communications here at the Foundation, and it is my pleasure to be your host for today's webinar. At the Foundation, we are growing a healthier world by changing the trajectory of human health. That is our mission. It is bold yet simple. And we believe that fruits and vegetables are the answer. We work to remove barriers that prevent people from eating more of them. And in thinking about those barriers, we're focused on 4 strategic outcomes. We want to boost appeal. That means improving the appeal and driving demand of fruits and vegetables through culturally relevant content. We want consumers to choose them, but also eat them, right? Making it easy. We are improving access, and it's just that. Making them accessible can make it more easy to eat more. Nurture fruit and vegetable professionals, just like you. We offer professional development and educational resources that help you promote fruits and vegetables every day in your daily jobs. We want to scale partner impact. So we're listening for opportunities and barriers where we can form greater strategic alliances and stakeholder engagements that strengthen our collective global impact. So as a global foundation, and thinking globally yet acting locally, this work culminates here in the United States with our Have a Plant movement and our digital campaign. And this helps us all come together with one unified message. So you'll see the Have a Plant campaign throughout our materials, and it's all throughout fruitsandveggies.org. This is the consumer call to action and the hub that makes it easy and inspires consumers to have a plant every time we eat. We do this through compelling content that inspires consumers. We distribute science-based, consumer-focused resources and food, nutrition, and health community engagement tools throughout the digital ecosystem, including our website, social media channels, and newsletters. And this is your one-stop shop for all things fruits and veggies. I wanted to highlight some unique fruit and veggie insights and communication tools for professionals. A few new ones that we have here. We've got some new consumer behavior and nutrition research reports, toolkits with promotional ideas, seasonal recipes, turnkey social media posts, and more. We've also got some new handouts for kids, as well as some non-communicable disease-specific handouts for patients and clients alike. We also have webinars available like today's where we unpack new research related to growing consumption of fruits and vegetables, and we share practical ways to implement it in your respective communities. So before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping notes. The CPE activity application for this webinar has been approved for 1 credit. You will receive an email afterwards with this certificate for your records. Okay, so guess what? You can sit back, relax, take in all the great information from today because we're going to be sending you a link to the webinar recording as well as the presentation and your certificate. So that'll all be available in our webinar section as well. But you don't have to take vigorous notes or screenshots. You can just relax and take it all in and revisit afterwards. We want to hear from you. We've got time at the end for Q&A. So please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to insert your questions. I will try to answer as we go, but then I'm also going to mark them for the panel here to answer live at the end. So type them in as you think about it. We want to capture that. And like I said, we'll take time at the end. So now that you're aware of how to ask questions and that you're going to get all the information, let's dig in. Here are the learning objectives for today's webinar listed for your review. And now I'd like to introduce our wonderful speakers. So first up, we've got Jamie Schwartz-Cohen, Executive Vice President at Golin Ketchum, leading its nutrition practice and pioneering innovative, insight-driven approaches to nutrition communications and public relations. Thank you, Jamie, for being our partner here today. And we've also got Dylan Bailey, VP of Nutrition Affairs at Golin Ketchum. Dylan specializes in translating complex nutrition science into credible AI-optimized communications across platforms. We're going to hear his expertise today as well. Thanks for being with us, Dylan. And we've got Emily Holdorf, registered dietitian and the community and influencer manager with the Foundation for Fresh Produce. Emily focuses on translating nutrition science into engaging consumer-facing resources and educational materials to help people eat and enjoy more fruits and vegetables here at the foundation. So before passing it over, we need to put up these disclosures. And so they are listed here on the slide for you all to see. So without further ado, I want to get right to the juice and turn it over to Jamie Schwartz-Cohen to kick us off. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, including the AI note takers. I commented about that in the chat. Very relevant today to see everybody, all of them join too. This is for the humans and the robots. So communications evolution. Well, first wanted to note another evolution. So some of you might know me from Ketchum. We merged earlier this month, Goal and Ketchum, if you're not up on your PR industry news. So that is new news to many of you. But okay, let's get into it, the communications evolution. I always say you can't innovate forward without looking back. So let's take a look back on the next slide and how we got here. So communication channels early in the 20s was all about radio, 50s, then the TV. We get to the 90s with internet search, 2000s, social channels. There was now engagement. It wasn't just command and control. People were conversing with each other. And then now here we are in the 2020s with AI search. And now it's all about finding those answers. Next slide. This slide is always wild to me when you look at just the adoption of media throughout history. Starting with Netflix, for example, it took 18 years to reach 100 million users. But fast forward to a few years ago, ChatGPT, 2 months to reach 100 million users. So it's just, you just see how fast everything is going now. I looked at this from, I joined Ketchum the week that the first tweet was sent. So when I think about that moment when it was now to a dialogue, then fast forward to when one of our clients hosted a mommy blogger event, and we saw the mommy blogger start using a hashtag to figure out who was going on this trip. And I had to walk down the hall to my colleague and say, what's a hashtag? It was just the wild, wild west then, and it's just the wild, wild west now. And we're just all figuring this out together. So that's what we're here to do. But just everything is happening so fast. So on the next slide, it's just beginning, right? So now we have 900 million users active globally on ChatGPT. The forecasted at 70% of all searches are no-click results. So that means that people are just taking what they're reading from the AI responses at face value. And then we're also seeing that 50% of web traffic, 50% predicted brand website traffic declines by 2028. So just when you think about the brand websites today, the purpose is not for people to go, it's to speak to the robots, right? So everything is just changing so quickly. On the next slide, we have a new alphabet soup, right? Like SEO, optimizing for search rankings. AIO is optimizing for artificial intelligence systems. And then today we have GEO optimizing for generative search by AI. So just to take a step back on what is generative search, on the next slide, let's do a little definition, just so we're on the same page. Generative search is AI-powered search that doesn't just return a list of links, it actually generates the answer for you. So as I mentioned, you're not just clicking on different links to learn about things, everything is being synthesized for you across the web and providing that coherent conversational answer. The AI is using large language models, LLMs, to create something new in real time, pulling from existing content, but presenting in a way that's tailored to your specific question. It's faster, it's more conversational, and it fundamentally changes how people discover and consume information. In the next slide, the information, so what we want to do is really influence the machine before it influences others. Again, the audience here is robots. We are trying to get ahead and provide the information that the LLMs are pulling from, so that the answer comes out on top. We want to, on the goal of in generative search on the next slide is it's really to be the source that AI systems reach for first and be presented in the most favorable light when they do. So being most sourced means that your content is so credible, so authoritative, and so useful that AI systems cite you as the primary source, which means that your voice becomes part of the answer itself. Most favorable means that when you do appear in those high impact results, you're framed as the expert, the trusted voice, the one who has the answer. And this isn't about vanity metrics or rankings anymore. It's about becoming essential to how AI answers the question your audiences are asking. And we're really shifting from, on the next slide, share of voice to share of answers. We want to think about this is fundamentally different. It's not about how loud you are. AI cares about what the best answer is. Your share of answers is determined by relevance. Is your content actually answering the question that people are asking? Visibility, can AI systems find and access your content as the source? And sentiment, when you do appear, are you portrayed as being credible, trustworthy, and authoritative? And when you master these three, you win not just in that invisibility, but authority in the AI generated results that matter most. And earning this trust is a team game. So from an earn perspective, those of you nutrition professionals who are being quoted in media, that is one way that those expert answers are being pulled through. Earned media is huge when it comes to what AI is pulling from, and Dylan's going to go way deep into that. Brand websites are still very important, as I mentioned. They're speaking to the robots. Commerce and review partners, and of course, social influence. We're seeing that Google AI loves extracting the transcripts from YouTube videos, and we're seeing other channels like Reddit really informing, driving the answers for AI. So all of these things that I mentioned can not only lift you, but bury you when it comes to the algorithms. One example on the next slide, just to give one quick example, is when Cracker Barrel changed their logo, there was a lot of negative attention to it, but the negative attention was actually bots, and that wasn't identified until a few weeks later when researchers went in and identified that. But once the bots started the negative attention, humans then piled on as well. So bot fed, human read, and algorithm spread. On the next slide, and when it comes to deep fakes, there's so many examples of deep fakes, but this was the one, the Marion Nestle example was the one that I first saw when I took a step back and said, whoa, what is happening here? Where it looked very real. It was her talking about why you shouldn't eat breakfast and why you should fast and all these things that, of course, are not things that she or any nutrition professional would say, but it was just wild to see that what is coming and what is possible. And then it's a game of telephone. You start with this science-based information, and it just then gets communicated by the news media, who of course is trying to do that accurate job, but it ends up as that headline, that soundbite, communicated by social media experts. But then when it gets down to the lay consumer, it loses a lot of the science. So that's the world we're living in now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dylan to do a deep dive on what is AI reading and what we can all, as nutritional professionals, do to ensure that our content is being leveraged.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everybody. So great to be with you today. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff going on in the AI ecosystem today. I want this to be super conversational, super interactive. Use that Q&A, use that chat, and let's just get right into it. So, how are consumers really using AI for nutrition? They're using it in a lot of different ways, and they are using it every day, pretty much. As you can see from the slide here, this is just sort of a grouping of all the different ways people are interacting with these large language models, daily, whether it be helping them come up with recipes, helping them come up with weight loss plans, helping them understand nuances of a food brand and maybe the ingredients in that brand. There's just so much going on with how the consumer has sort of adopted the use of these as just an everyday tool. similar to how they might use text messaging or something like that. It's just integrated into their daily life. You can go to the next slide. But when it comes to like what exactly is informing what these models cite and how they bring up information when a user uses them, that's pretty nuanced. So we actually messed around a little bit with some of the models just to give you guys an idea of what's being pulled through. And as you can see here from a few of the different models that we queried, the what it's pulling from is super diverse, right? So like Google AI is favoriting a mix of social media and authoritative sources, right? So you like to this question of how can I eat more fruits and vegetables? It cited things from Reddit, it cited Instagram posts, and then it also cited things from the CDC and the AHA. So super interesting. ChatGPT doesn't favor social media as much as other outlets, but does love to cite authoritative sources. Including Have a Plant, right? Like, including even traditional media sources, and even the dietary guidelines, government sources. So it sticks to more traditional news type sources. And then even, something like Perplexity, it's also going more on the government and authoritative health side of things, even bringing in things like stuff from the Air Force and other governments, like the government of Canada. Super fascinating. So if you go to the next slide, we can actually see why that is, right? Like, so ChatGPT really loves this authoritative knowledge base. It loves a mix of social and established, and kind of sticks to that sort of dynamic. Google AI again is featuring YouTube more than a lot of other sites in some ways, because again, Google owns YouTube. So there's a lot of data sharing going on and integration going on there. So it does enjoy that, social and professional type mix as well. And Perplexity really kind of leans more towards some of those authoritative sources like Forbes, but it also will utilize those first person opinion based sites like a Reddit, like a Quora, things like that. You can go to the next slide. Again, this is just another overview of some of the other things you might have seen on that one slide where we queried, right? So government and health association, web pages, even press releases are getting pulled in a lot these days, which is super fascinating. But what you have mixed in with some of these like more authoritative sources are, things like Wikipedia, first person opinion based outlets, blogs, social media posts, right? Like things that may not be vetted properly, or they may just be written by anybody. And you'll see why that's important in a few slides to pay attention to, and why we're really doing this webinar today in terms of empowering the experts in the field to get their content pulled through, not just by anybody else. Another thing that's important on this slide is the note of recency. So models really do tend to cite things that they perceive as more recent or more current. So we do have some slides that I'll get to talking about how you can enhance your content to appear more recent to the models so they favor you and pull you in. You can go to the next slide. All right. So again, the other thing I want to talk about is how this is always changing, right? The models are always changing. They're always learning. And a good example of that is in 2025, a study was done looking at the top domains, cited from these various models. And Reddit was number one. It was pulling constantly from Reddit. It was looking for those opinions, those first person narratives. A new study done this year actually found that YouTube has overtaken Reddit in terms of how the models are citing it. That could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because the transcript technology is getting better on YouTube. There's more creators on there doing more thoughtful content. Because of the publicly accessible data on YouTube, it could be easier for these models to get into. But this is just a good example of why it's so important to diversify the type of content you are putting out there on multiple different channels to give a bunch of different signals to the models that hopefully increases the likelihood of you getting pulled in. And you go to the next slide. When it comes to social media, I also tried to look and see if there's any new studies that had come out looking at citation metrics for social, and there was. This is from February, the February-March timeline of 2026, and you can see here what are these models citing when it comes to social? It's YouTube again. Again, that could be because of how Gemini and Google AI are functioning now, or just because these transcripts are getting parsed and have such a depth of content that the models really love using them. Another thing to pay attention to on this slide is the role of short form content and how the models seem to be interacting with that. So things like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, these red boxes show the percentage of increase in this particular study window. The models seem to be interacting with the short form content in an increasing amount, maybe not to the level of some of these longer form pieces or other traditional sources, but these shorts, these shorter form content things are tripping the models a little bit as well now. So from a content creation standpoint, that's something to pay attention to. And it also just reinforces why diversity is so important in terms of how content's created to maximize the chance that something gets pulled in and informs an answer. Next slide. The other thing I want to bring up is the types of queries that people ask will impact what gets pulled in terms of a citation. So you can see here, this was a study done in 2025 looking at how different types of sort of questions or queries, like what sources get pulled in based on those queries. So you can see the first row, advice seeking. It's more corporate blog, traditional type content. But if you ask for like an overview of current events, for some reason, it's favoring journalism. If you want instructions, it's favoring NGOs or government sort of sources. So, the type of questions that people are asking, the queries that people are asking, can also impact what is being used as a citation. And again, all of this goes back to showing up in a lot of different places with the digital footprint to enhance what the model could possibly pull from. Next slide. All right, you guys might not like this slide, but there was a study done a few years ago that basically looked at how answers, from ChatGPT compared to how a human dietitian might answer common questions. The researchers concluded that the models were doing a pretty good job, which is not great for us. But essentially, I wanted to put this slide in here to showcase that the models are getting better with all of this data and all this training going into it and all of the queries going into it and what data sources it can access. They are getting better. And that experience is impacting how a user may or may not perceive the models. And if you go to the next slide, that's important because there's just implicit trust, as Jamie mentioned, with how consumers utilize these models. They are trusting what they get at the first stance of it. They're not very good at picking up when something may or may not be truthful or incorrect. They are sort of just taking it at face value and utilizing that as the answer. And if you go to the next slide, again, that's a problem because we know AI models do tend to hallucinate. So basically what that means is it may make up an answer when it doesn't exist. It may make up a source. And you can even see here from this screen grab, in some cases, the model will just make up a study and cite it. And that's obviously not very good. That's not good at all. So you have this sort of perfect storm of people trusting what they get from a model implicitly. They're not checking their answers. The models are sort of making up content or sometimes, just out of thin air, they're making up things. And people are not checking their answers. So if you go to the next slide, this is all something that is coming together and really reinforcing why, experts need to get out there and make the content searchable and retrievable for models. It all comes down to this concept called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Basically, it's how how content gets chunked out and shows up for models to be able to cite. And we're going to go through a few steps on the next few slides that are going to break that down for you. And next slide. So again, think about this not as, this is almost an extension of our roles as dietitians, right? Like this is another form of public health information gathering and seeking that people are using every day, and we want to make sure that the content that's on there that's being retrieved is accurate, is factual, is done by experts. Really puts the content into easy terms to understand. And we can think about it as getting cited by a model is basically you training the next generation of information, of content. Once you get pulled in, you're there. You're there for good. You're going to get used again, hopefully, right? So, think about it like that. Like it's sort of like a public health extension of our roles. You can go to the next slide. Let's get in a little bit to how do we do this? Like, how do we actually optimize the content to really give us a good chance of getting pulled in? What I will preface is that there is no right or wrong way to do this. It just doesn't exist. It's so variable right now that there's no one-stop shop. There's also no guarantee you will ever get something pulled in. What we can do is increase the likelihood that you get pulled in. And what that means is we want to give the models so many signals, an overwhelming amount of signals that tell it, pull from me, I have the good stuff, that really will get you in and used. That is the goal. We also can't forget that a lot of times when we're writing or when we're giving quotes, we're making content, we're also doing stuff for humans too. We got to remember that. So there's a fun acronym called EAT. That's a good one to remember for this particular webinar. It stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. This works for humans, and this also works for models. And there's a way to make sure that your content brings EAT with it every time you do it. All right, next slide. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is traditional media. So think things like blogs, think things like traditional news articles. Even think about things like when you're giving a quote for media. If you do that type of work, that's sort of the domain we're going to play with right now. So the first thing that's very important when you are writing for AI, being direct. There was a study that was done looking at the different lengths of paragraphs and what gets more likely to be pulled in or not. The opening 200 words of a paragraph, super critical to how things can basically get pulled in or not. 200 words. I mean, that's super tight. And the model seemed to do really well with this upfront of anywhere from 40 to 60 words that really summarizes everything. Like get all of your stuff in one place right at the upfront as the immediate signal to the model. This is the answer right here. Boom. This is what I'm trying to do. Boom. And it serves as an immediate point signal that, hey, check me out. I have some stuff that you're going to want to hear more about. The second thing, and this is a pretty important one, question-based headings. So in terms of writing, these are basically the things that would come under your title, your H2, your H3, your sub-paragraphs. And the models do really well when you have question-based headings because basically you are mimicking how a user may be typing a query into a ChatGPT. And I love this stat here that when someone queries a model, their average word length is 23 words compared to 4 from a traditional standpoint. So someone's having a conversation with the models when they're using them. Hey, I really need help. My produce keeps going bad and I really need help learning how to keep it fresh. What do you recommend? Right? That's literally how people are using it. They're having a conversation with a friend or an expert. So your question-based headings of your content need to sort of match that structure. It needs to match the types of questions people may be asking, so that it's a clear signal to the model. Again, I have the answer based on what people are searching. I have the answer. Here's all what you need to know. So these question-based headings are very important. Modular sections also super important. Remember that concept of RAG, right? Chunking the content. The models may only scrape one specific section at a time. So when you're writing, each section really needs to stand alone. It needs to stand alone in case a model comes in, sees your stuff, scrapes it, it can pull out exactly what it needs from each independent section. It can clip it, so that's really, really important too when you're writing. It doesn't like runoffs. It doesn't like, massive things. It likes everything nice and concise and clear that it can come in, pick you up, and take you out. Scannable formatting is another thing to consider. So what I mean by this is think about things like bulleted lists, think about things like numbered steps, um, think about things like FAQ sections, frequently asked questions. These are all ways to showcase to the model you have a clear understanding of the content and it's already done the hard work for it. You've done the hard work. You've bulleted things out in a very clear way that tells the model what it needs to know to pull you out, to get an answer. The models sometimes don't do very well when content is like buried in things like images, or even when things are buried in things like PDFs. Depending on sort of the data, the backend data parameters of some of those things, they're not easily scrapable, and they may sort of just get overlooked. The last thing is this concept of writing conversationally and concisely. Um, you know, to kind of ladder up to the chunking and to the modular sections, keep everything nice and tight. Anywhere from 2 to 3 sentences. Strong 2 to 3 sentences, very clear, no jargon, no fluff, right to the point. It loves plain language. The models love just when everything is laid out nice and easy for it. It makes it easy to pull. And we can go to the next slide. When it comes to that EAT acronym, there's also a few things that you can do to increase the signal, strength of your writing. So, first person proof, right? Establishing, who you are. You are an expert, and what expertise do you bring to the table when you're writing this stuff? Very important. And now that could include, if you're writing content, getting quotes from third-party experts and making sure you're listing out why that person's an expert. Where do they work? What do they do? What are their credentials? Or if you're writing a blog, injecting that first-person expertise, really super important stuff. I've been doing this for X amount of years. I've seen X amount of patients, things like that are really good signals. Byline, also super important, making sure that you have all your credentials listed out. How many years of experience have you been working? How many followers do you have on social media? Like all these like quantifiable numbers and things like that. These are just more authoritative signals that you can inject in a byline that could really help establish you as the expert to the models too. The models love data. They love when you have citations. They love when you say, I looked at 20 clinical trials and blah, blah, blah. Like they love when research is included in content. It's just another way to signal authority that, you know what you're talking about. For some reason, they really enjoy when things like systematic reviews are used or meta-analyses are used. And that could be because the models perceive these types of papers as a compilation of evidence, a lot of evidence in one place, and that you've reviewed that all. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're writing and using sources. Citations. I have another slide on citations and best practices, but the only thing to know here is this first bullet. You got to use citations. It can increase, this concept of visibility by up to 40%, meaning when you use citations, it just signals to the model, again, you know what you're talking about. You are an expert. You should be trusted. You do have authority. And then the last thing, updating regularly. This could be something as simple as going into an article that you've written or a blog and changing the date, right? Changing the date so that it's current, doing an evidence review of your content, updating any studies that may have come out, and then changing that date. You want to keep the dates current because, again, recency signals are very important to the models to get you pulled in. So anything you can do to signal recency, super important tactic to increase that likelihood of getting pulled in as well. You can go to the next slide. All right, I mentioned citations and references. So descriptive hyperlinks are super important from a trust standpoint. And, I know a lot of times in scientific or technical writing, we may use things like superscripts. those are tough for models to really kind of like identify because you have these little small numbers in the copy that correspond to this like reference page down below. It's a lot for it to put together. So a best practice that I like to talk about is using hyperlinks within the copy that correspond to the basically like the anchor text or the description that you want highlighted that corresponds to that reference. So you can take a look here. Before this was some content that it was a blog style content, and it was only using superscripts. So the revision that was made is hyperlinking the actual studies that were being referenced instead of just superscripts in the body copy. And what that does is it signals authority to the models that like I know what I'm talking about. I have all the stuff right here. Come check it out. And in some cases, the models may be able to go into those URLs and see what exactly you were talking about. So it's just an easier way to signal authority versus just using a superscript or something like that. Next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit about social, and I'm going to kind of fly through this just so that Emily, our next speaker, can really hammer some of these new ways models are bringing in information and citing it. I just want to touch on a few things, and she's going to really go in depth on some of these newer things like YouTube and Reddit and LinkedIn that are also being cited by the models. The concept with social media versus traditional media and increasing likelihood of pull through, very similar. It's very similar. It's the same sort of stuff of, leading with the upfront answer, making sure you're using questions or question-based headers in things like a script. If you're doing a podcast or a video, thinking really critically about what that transcript's going to look like and any key words or key questions that could be of resonance for a model or your target audience to analyze and be like, oh, yep, wow, this transcript has everything I need. Let me go in and parse it and take a look. To even when you create things like Instagram, reels or a post, making sure that your post captions are treated just like that traditional writing structure, where you're doing a core upfront of the copy. You're keeping it short and concise, 2 to 3 sentences, if that much. You're utilizing URLs or links in the body copy to signal that authority. You're using descriptors of the types of studies that you might be talking about in a post, if it's that sort of post. It's really very similar to the traditional media approach in terms of optimizing your social content for pull through as well. So, kind of interesting. And another thing I'll quickly mention too is when it comes to things like videos, the models are really going to like the fact that a transcript exists. They're going to like the fact that a transcript exists because it's a clear way for it to go in, and it could have like 30 minutes of transcript to parse and look through a robust amount of content versus somewhere else. It might have a difficult time, understanding, how the content could be influenced and structured because it's just, it's not something that would be able to clearly signal to the model that it knows what it's doing. So the videos and the long form content, something really interesting to keep in mind about. And again, Emily's going to really go in depth on this, but it's just something to think about for the next time when you guys create content. You can go to the next slide. Another thing we also like to talk about on our side of things is using synthetic audiences. Synthetic audiences are super important for testing your content, basically pressure testing it. So, these are 5 steps you can use to basically, use a model to create a synthetic audience that you can tell it what you want it to do to pressure check your content. So let's say you're making a blog and you want it to be AI optimized. You write your blog and you want to make sure that you've done everything possible to signal to the model, hey, I need you to pull this in for me. Create a synthetic audience. Hey, you are a specialist who has expertise in optimizing content to make sure that it can get cited by ChatGPT. What would you recommend I do to this blog to enhance it so that it gets pulled through? And see what it says. These synthetic audiences are great ways to really just play around with your content, pressure test it, and optimize it so that you don't get ignored. You do get a shot at getting pulled in, and you can do everything possible to increase all those likelihood signals, so the models really pay attention to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to do some really cool deep dive stuff into some of the newer sources that models have been using more frequently. So thanks, Emily, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, all right. So I'm going to come in like Dylan said, and just highlight some of these emerging sources for AI. And kind of the point behind this section here too is to one, just highlight the fact that fruitsandveggies.org has a ton of different resources that are available for you at your fingertips. And to show you just some different ways that you can leverage some of our resources to not only highlight your own expertise in whatever area of nutrition you might focus in, but also being able to appear as that credible expert to AI. So we'll start first here with some Instagram Reels. So we know that the tale as old as time has been to prioritize Instagram Reels. Consumers have shorter attention spans. The algorithm has preferred this. Now we're learning that AI models are citing Reels almost 4 times more than a static image post. So how can we make sure that your Reels are getting pulled into these models? So like Dylan mentioned earlier, really starting with that bottom line upfront answer, so that bluff answer. And you'll see kind of in all of these different platforms that we talk through that is pretty much the number one tip is like, if someone's only watching the first 3 seconds, or if AI is only, scraping certain portions of your content, get to the main point right up front, opening with that like 40 to 60 word summary that kind of hooks people in and signals the takeaway for AI is really key. Then also coming back to just being specific with numbers and details. So not only saying these in your video, so if you have to bake something for 20 minutes at 425 degrees, verbally saying that, putting it on screen text, and then also putting it in the caption is going to help amplify the chances of AI pulling that in. Then also kind of structuring the reel like it's like a mini guide almost. So I think a lot of times we can think of reels and short form video as like purely this entertainment piece. So while yes, it needs to be a little bit entertaining and hook people in from that perspective, really focusing on being able to break it up, chunk it up like we were saying earlier, and kind of making sure there's different themes or different points to the video itself. And really using words that people are actually searching for. So the way that I like to think about it is, if I'm using ChatGPT or if I'm using some type of AI tool, how am I conversing with it? And a lot of times I'm literally just typing, how can I do X, Y, Z? Or like you're really having a conversation with this bot. So thinking about it in that way as well. So for this example here, if we're wanting to reference this article, 12 Easy Dinner Recipes for Spring, maybe we're going to fold in some terms like vegetarian dinners or weeknight recipe ideas to just broaden the search and cast that wider net of what AI can capture and pull in. And then maintaining that trust and consistency piece of making sure that if you are linking to a resource, you can mention it in the video, you can link to it in your bio, And really kind of saying the same thing across multiple platforms is really what's going to be helpful. So next, touching on Reddit, this is probably a little bit of a different platform for most of us here in terms of using it in a professional sense, quote unquote. I know I like to use Reddit personally for a lot of different things, and so does a lot of people. But it's incredibly important to kind of leverage this new up and coming AI source. Just because of how frequently AI is pulling in these Reddit answers and these Reddit threads and things like that. So Reddit works because it's built on real conversations and community. And so the goal with this platform isn't necessarily to post content per se, but to really genuinely want to show up and help somebody. So for this example here, this is, someone posting about their child who doesn't really like veggies, and seeking kind of help in that community in a sense. So in this case, rather than just like jumping straight in with advice, building a little bit of that community and rapport is going to really go a long way. And you can see kind of the example reply here on the screen of like using personal experience. So maybe you have had this same experience in your life and knows something or someone that has a similar experience. So, giving that kind of personal experience and then rounding it out if it feels applicable to link to something that you found helpful. So in this case, the example is linking to, some of the consumer handouts that are on fruitsandveggies.org that are specifically for kids. And so really being authentic, not using it as like this, oh, hey, here's my link to, book a service with me or something like that. But it's more so like if you found a certain resource or guide or something like that helpful, then authentically linking out to that. What I will say with Reddit is that the community admins tend to be very strict and can pick up on the even like slightest nuance of someone doing some self-promotion. So this bullet point here of respecting community norms and aiming for that 95-5 rule. So like aim for, 95% of what you're conversing and saying is genuine value. And then maybe just that small 5% amount of some slight promotion or weaving in, a credible source that that you want to direct somebody to. And really staying in the conversation. So not just like posting and disappearing, but really kind of finding a couple Reddit communities that speak to you and spending some time in there, just kind of hanging out and really conversing with people and building that community and joining in. So next with LinkedIn articles, this is a little bit different of a twist on using LinkedIn. So I think a lot of us are familiar with just the basic, LinkedIn post status update type usage, but publishing LinkedIn articles is going to have a permanent indexed URL. It's going to earn more citations from AI than just a generic feed post. So really kind of capitalizing on that and joining in the game of these LinkedIn articles. So this is something that actually came up for our team just this week of, it was brought to our attention through some of this and working with other people and other experts in this area of like, hey, LinkedIn articles are really, up and coming and where it's at, not only like algorithmically on the platform, but also pulling in AI wise. So this is something that our team, we're going to play around with and see how it goes. But the nice piece of a LinkedIn article is that one, it's longer. So it does provide more of that text for AI to scrape and pull in. But then you can also embed different references and PDFs strategically throughout. So, for this example, you could be kind of summarizing some key insights or points about, fruits and veggies, whatnot, and then link to this deeper resource, the Fruit and Veggie Handbook, which is a PDF type of file, could link to that. And that's kind of embedded into the article as well. And so you're maintaining that trust, that consistency, that's key. Then lastly here, we will talk about some long form YouTube videos specifically. So these longer form YouTube videos are extremely important for getting AI citations because, a 15-minute video is going to create so much more transcript and text for AI to pull in. So your chances of getting that cited are naturally going to be much higher. And so these could be things like a reference style video. So let's say, you want to talk about pregnancy nutrition and you found this article on our website that's all about fruits and veggies and which ones are best for gestational diabetes. So kind of going through whatever you normally would want to be saying about pregnancy nutrition in general or gestational diabetes specifically. And then naturally mentioning throughout the video, like naturally weaving into your language of, according to this article, blah, 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 about fruits and veggies, is going to help kind of pull that in. You can also link to articles or other resources in your description, which is going to help. But really just making sure that it's like a natural kind of cadence and flow is really what's going to be helpful. And then one last tip I'll leave you with here is updating and optimizing the metadata periodically. So that could be literally simply just going into the description and saying, updated for 2026, or if there's a new link or new guidance that comes out, changing that out and keeping it fresh and updated. So just kind of wrapping us all up here today, bringing it back to this main idea that we're creating content that works for both people and AI. So kind of doing both at the same time. So noting that AI systems are wanting that answer first. They're wanting things that are easily extractable, really text-rich, data-rich things, avoiding some of that fluff and jargon. So kind of gone are the days of, telling your life story before getting into your main point and kind of getting to the answer. So really just hitting it hard up front with things that you can verify, quotations, citations, things like that. And then really just wanting to make sure that you're being seen as that credible source, linking out to your primary resources, showing up consistently across platforms, like I mentioned before, saying the same things across all of these various different platforms is really what's going to be key to just continue to help you show up as that credible voice and get pulled in. So we're going to all kind of come back here and do a little Q&A because I have seen that the chat and the Q&A have really been going crazy over here. So
Amazing. Wow. Emily, Dylan, Jamie, thank you so much. There is so much chat and chatter and questions. I do want to respect everybody's time. We have only a few minutes left. So I think what we're gonna do, if it's okay with everybody, we're gonna huddle on our end. And I think we're gonna go through all of the Q&A and the chat. And I think what we'll do is pull together either a short video or maybe just a tip sheet or a one pager to address everybody's questions because there really is a lot to dig into here. And I don't want to pick one over the other. So there is one Keith, thank you. This is great. I think this is the perfect way to end, actually. Keith Ayub, thank you. You said, what's the best thing RDNs can do to make themselves more valuable to a consumer than AI? And Jamie, what's your response? It's like perfect.
So it's not RD versus AI. AI is just another one of our audiences now. So I think it's a fundamental shift in how we think about our role. I think this is just in general a watershed moment for our profession. So you want to get out there and be that expert, and also self-care, right? We're not going to be just churning out information. It's all the time. It's just where you're most comfortable, the channels you're most comfortable. Don't feel like you have to be everywhere, right? Like Reddit, yes, it's being pulled from Reddit, but if that's not a place that feels comfortable to you, like don't go there. Somebody else might really gravitate towards Reddit. So find your channel. And I think that's true just in general on what everybody's doing for their own professional growth, right? Like where in general, not just speaking to the robots. So I think it's just really shifting how we're thinking about this, but it's not us versus them.
Exactly. I love that. We need to embrace how we can be a part of the team to program the model. So we got to get the truest information out in a clear and concise way. And really just I love the idea of I think one of them, Dylan, was creating that audience through, asking, creating that synthesized audience was a big unlock, I think, for people. And then I think linking to sources and, there's some really good tips and tricks here that were provided today. So again, we'll follow up with everyone who was here today, and then those who registered as well. We'll circle back. So I want to thank you again, our friends at Golden Ketchum. Emily, thanks for the tips. We hope that you continue to use our resources at fruitsandveggies.org. I hope you all have a wonderful summer. And I hope you find many occasions to have a plant. So thanks for all you do. Continue to promote fruits and veggies every day, and we appreciate you. Take care.